Be me, Adrienne, 29 years old, married to Joshua for 3 years. Always prided myself on being an enlightened woman who understands what real equality looks like. Not like those basic women who just accept whatever their husbands want. Been doing a lot of reading lately about women's autonomy and independence. Realize I've been compromising too much in my marriage. One evening after dinner, decide it's time to have an important conversation with Joshua. He's washing dishes while I dry them, typical domestic scene. Joshua, I've been thinking about something really important and I need to discuss it with you. He looks over with that patient expression he always has. What's on your mind, Adrienne? Take a deep breath, because I know this is going to be a big conversation. I think we need to have separate bedrooms. He stops washing the plate he's holding and turns to face me completely. His eyebrows furrow and I can see confusion in his eyes. Separate bedrooms? Why would we need that? This is exactly the kind of reaction I expected from him. Men just don't understand how important personal space is for women. Look, I've been reading about healthy relationships and personal autonomy, and I realize that sharing a bedroom is actually a really outdated concept. He's still staring at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. It's about maintaining my independence as an individual woman, not just being defined as part of a couple. Joshua sets down the dish and crosses his arms. I can tell he's getting annoyed, but he needs to understand this is important. Adrienne, we're married. Sharing a bedroom is pretty normal for married couples. His tone is getting sharper, and I can see that vein in his temple starting to show. That's exactly the problem, Joshua. You think normal means I have to give up my personal space and autonomy. Start explaining to him why this matters so much. In a truly equal partnership, both people need to maintain their individual identities. When women automatically give up their personal space to accommodate men, it perpetuates these really harmful power dynamics. He's looking at me like I've lost my mind. Having your own bedroom means having a space that's completely yours, where you can be yourself without having to consider someone else's preferences or needs. Joshua is definitely getting angry now. His voice is rising. Are you serious right now? You want us to sleep in separate rooms like we're roommates instead of husband and wife? I knew he'd react like this because men always get defensive when women assert their independence. This isn't about being roommates, it's about being equal partners who respect each other's need for personal space. He starts pacing around the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. Adrienne, this is insane. We're married. Part of being married is sharing intimate space together. It's called intimacy for a reason. Clearly, he's not understanding the deeper principles at work here. Intimacy shouldn't require me to sacrifice my personal autonomy, Joshua. True intimacy comes from two whole, independent people choosing to be together. Joshua stops pacing and looks at me with this expression I've never seen before, like he's furious, but also disappointed. Do you hear yourself right now? You're talking about our marriage like it's some kind of business arrangement where we negotiate territory. His voice is getting louder, and I can tell he's really upset. This is our home, Adrienne, our bedroom, our bed, the place where we're supposed to be closest to each other. He's clearly not getting it, so I need to explain this more clearly. The fact that you automatically assume I should just accept sharing space with you shows exactly why this is necessary. Women have been conditioned for centuries to believe that being in a relationship means giving up their individual space and identity. I'm not going to perpetuate that cycle. Joshua is staring at me with his mouth slightly open. Then he starts laughing, but not in a good way. It's that bitter laugh people do when they can't believe what they're hearing. You've got to be kidding me. You think wanting to share a bedroom with my wife is some kind of patriarchal oppression? I can see he's really angry now, but he needs to understand this isn't about him personally. It's not about you specifically, Joshua. It's about the broader patterns and structures that define how relationships work in our society. When a woman automatically gives up her personal space to accommodate a man's expectations, even if he's a good man, it reinforces these really problematic dynamics. He's shaking his head, and I can tell his patience is running out. Adrienne, listen to yourself. You're talking about me like I'm some kind of oppressor. I'm your husband. I love you. I want to sleep next to you because that's what people do when they're in love and committed to each other. The fact that you see that as oppression is honestly disturbing. Obviously, he's taking this too personally and missing the bigger picture. This isn't about you being an oppressor. It's about me reclaiming my right to personal space and independence. Every woman deserves to have a space that's completely her own, where she doesn't have to consider anyone else's needs or preferences. It's about maintaining my identity as an individual, not just as half of a couple. Joshua looks like he wants to throw something. His face is getting red and that vein in his temple is really prominent now. Identity, individual. Adrienne, you're my wife. We chose to build a life together. That means sharing things, including our bedroom. What's next? Separate kitchens, separate living rooms? Should we just live in completely different houses? He's being dramatic, but I need to stay focused on the real issue. You're exaggerating to avoid dealing with the actual point I'm making. This is specifically about bedroom space because that's where the most intimate and personal activities happen. A woman needs to have complete control over her intimate space without having to negotiate or compromise with anyone else. I can see Joshua is getting more frustrated by the minute. He starts pacing again and his voice is getting really loud. Complete control. Adrienne, we're married. Marriage is about sharing your life with someone. It's about compromise and considering each other's needs. You're talking like being married to me is some kind of prison sentence. Clearly, I need to help him understand the deeper principles involved. Marriage shouldn't mean that a woman has to give up her autonomy or personal space. The fact that you assume I should just automatically be okay with sharing intimate space shows how deeply ingrained these patriarchal expectations are. Even good men like you can perpetuate harmful dynamics without realizing it. Joshua stops pacing and turns to face me directly. His eyes are blazing and I can tell he's really angry now. Harmful dynamics? Adrienne, I'm not perpetuating anything. I'm trying to have a marriage with you. And apparently wanting to sleep in the same bed as my wife makes me part of some patriarchal conspiracy. Do you realize how insane that sounds? He's getting too emotional to think clearly about this. I know this is hard for you to understand because men aren't taught to think about these issues. But women's autonomy and independence are really important, even within marriage. Separate bedrooms would actually strengthen our relationship because we'd both maintain our individual identities. Joshua looks at me like I've completely lost my mind. Strengthen our relationship? By sleeping apart? By treating our marriage like we're business partners instead of lovers? His voice is shaking with anger now. Adrienne, what you're describing isn't marriage. It's cohabitation with tax benefits. I can see he's too upset to have a rational conversation about this right now. Look, I know this is a big change and it's going to take some adjustment, but I really need you to think about why this is important to me as a woman and as an individual. This isn't about rejecting you, it's about claiming space for myself. Joshua stares at me for a long moment, then shakes his head. Fine. You want separate bedrooms? Fine. But don't pretend this is about feminism or independence. This is about you deciding that our marriage isn't worth the minor inconvenience of sharing space with me. He storms out of the kitchen and I can hear him slamming things around upstairs. Honestly, I expected him to react like this. Men always get defensive when women assert their independence, but I know this is the right decision for our relationship in the long run. He'll understand eventually once he sees how much better things are when we both have our own space. Spend the next few days setting up the guest bedroom as my new personal space. It feels amazing to have a room that's completely mine. I can decorate it exactly how I want without having to consider Joshua's preferences. Choose my own bedtime without worrying about disturbing him. Read with the lights on as late as I want. This is exactly what I was talking about regarding personal autonomy. Joshua barely speaks to me during this transition period. He's clearly still upset, but I know he'll come around. Men just need time to process these kinds of changes. Once he experiences the benefits of having his own space too, he'll understand why this was necessary. After about a week of separate bedrooms, start to notice some changes in our routine. Joshua doesn't come looking for me in the evenings anymore. Used to be he'd always want to talk about our days or just spend time together before bed. Now he just goes straight to his room after dinner. At first, this seems great because it proves my point about independence. We're both free to do our own thing without feeling obligated to spend every evening together. This is exactly the kind of healthy autonomy I was hoping to achieve. No more feeling like I have to accommodate his schedule or preferences for evening activities. But after a couple weeks, start to notice he's not being as affectionate during the day either. Used to be he'd give me a hug when he got home from work. would touch my hand or shoulder when we were talking. Now he's polite but distant, like we're just roommates sharing a house. Try to bring this up with him one evening while we're both in the living room. Joshua, I feel like you're being kind of distant lately. He looks up from his book with a neutral expression. I'm giving you the space and independence you wanted. That's not exactly what I meant, and I think he knows it. I meant emotional distance, not just physical space. We can still be close and affectionate even though we have separate bedrooms. He goes back to reading his book. I thought the whole point was maintaining individual identities. Clearly, he's still processing this change and probably feeling a little resentful. Having separate bedrooms doesn't mean we can't still be intimate and connected. It just means we each have our own personal space to retreat to. He doesn't respond and keeps reading. Over the next month, things continue to feel more and more distant between us. We eat dinner together but don't really talk much. Watch TV in the same room but don't sit together on the couch anymore. He's polite and civil, but there's no warmth or affection. Start to wonder if I should try to initiate more physical intimacy, but every time I try to be affectionate, he responds minimally. Not rejecting me exactly, but not engaging either, like he's going through the motions. One evening, try to talk to him about it again. I feel like we're not connecting the way we used to. He looks at me with this tired expression. What did you expect, Adrienne? You wanted independence and personal space. This is frustrating because he's missing the point. I wanted personal space, not emotional distance. We can still have a close, intimate relationship while maintaining our individual autonomy. He just shrugs. I'm not sure what you want from me anymore. Try to explain that having separate bedrooms was supposed to strengthen our relationship. The whole point was that we'd both maintain our individual identities and come together as equals. Instead of me just automatically accommodating your preferences, we'd both have our own space. He's looking at me like I'm speaking nonsense. And how's that working out for you? Honestly, starting to feel confused about why things aren't going the way I expected. Everything I read suggested that maintaining individual autonomy would make relationships stronger. But Joshua seems less interested in spending time with me, not more. Maybe he just needs more time to adjust to this new dynamic. Try, suggesting we plan some special time together. Maybe we should schedule some regular date nights or something. Make sure we're prioritizing our connection even though we have more independence now. He looks at me with this expression I can't quite read. Schedule time together? Like a business meeting? He's being deliberately difficult about this. I just think it's important that we're intentional about maintaining our relationship. Now that we both have more personal space, we need to make sure we're still prioritizing each other. He goes back to whatever he was doing on his phone. Sure, Adrienne, whatever you think is best. His tone is so flat and disengaged, like he doesn't actually care about any of this anymore. Starting to wonder if maybe I should have explained my reasoning better initially. Maybe he doesn't understand that this was supposed to benefit both of us. A few weeks later, try to have a more serious conversation about where we stand. I feel like you've been really disengaged from our relationship lately. He sets down what he's doing and looks at me directly. Adrienne, you wanted separate bedrooms so you could maintain your independence. I'm respecting that. He's clearly still not understanding what I was trying to achieve, but that doesn't mean we can't still be close and affectionate with each other. The separate bedrooms were about personal space, not about becoming distant. He's quiet for a moment, then shakes his head. I honestly don't know what you want anymore. Try to explain again why this arrangement is supposed to be good for us. When both people in a relationship maintain their individual autonomy, it creates a stronger foundation for genuine intimacy. Instead of me just automatically deferring to your preferences, we're both free to be ourselves. He's looking at me with this expression that's almost sad. And how do you feel about the results so far? Starting to feel defensive because he's implying this isn't working. I think we're both still adjusting to having more independence. It's natural that there would be a transition period while we figure out the new dynamic. He doesn't respond, just keeps looking at me with that same sad expression. Over the next few months, things continue to feel more and more like we're just roommates. We're polite to each other, but there's no real warmth or connection. He's not mean or hostile, just completely emotionally unavailable, like he's checked out of the relationship entirely. Start to feel genuinely confused about what's happening. Everything I read about healthy relationships emphasized the importance of individual autonomy, but instead of making us stronger, the separate bedrooms seemed to have killed whatever intimacy we had. Maybe Joshua just isn't emotionally mature enough to handle this kind of arrangement. Try to talk to him about it one more time. I feel like you've completely withdrawn from our relationship. He looks at me with this expression that's part frustration and part exhaustion. Adrienne, you got exactly what you asked for. We have separate bedrooms. We maintain our individual independence. What more do you want? He's being deliberately obtuse about this. I want us to still have an actual relationship, not just be two people who happen to live in the same house. Having separate bedrooms doesn't mean we can't still be intimate and connected. He laughs, but it's that bitter laugh again. Intimate? You wanted autonomy and independence. Intimacy requires vulnerability and closeness. Pick one. Now he's just being ridiculous. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, Joshua. You can be an independent individual and still have intimate relationships. The problem is that you're conflating physical proximity with emotional intimacy. He stares at me for a long moment. No, Adrienne. The problem is that you've turned our marriage into a sociology experiment. He's getting angry again and missing the point. This isn't an experiment. It's about creating a healthier dynamic where neither of us has to compromise our individual identity. Instead of me just automatically accommodating your preferences for shared space, we both get to maintain our autonomy. His voice is rising now. Our marriage isn't supposed to be about maintaining autonomy from each other. It's supposed to be about building something together. Clearly, he still doesn't understand the deeper principles involved. Building something together doesn't require sacrificing individual independence. In fact, the strongest relationships are between two whole autonomous people who choose to be together. He's shaking his head like I'm completely hopeless. Choose to be together? Adrienne, you chose to sleep apart from me. He's being deliberately literal instead of engaging with the actual concepts. Physical sleeping arrangements have nothing to do with emotional commitment. The fact that you think sharing a bed is necessary for intimacy shows how limited your understanding of healthy relationships is. His face is getting red again, and I can tell he's losing his patience. Limited understanding? Adrienne, most people would consider wanting to sleep next to their spouse pretty normal. Spend the next few months feeling increasingly frustrated with how stubborn he's being about this. He continues to be polite but distant, like we're just housemates. No affection, no real conversation, no intimacy of any kind. It's like he's punishing me for asserting my independence. Start to wonder if maybe I should try a different approach. Maybe he needs me to be more explicit about wanting intimacy while maintaining our separate bedrooms. Try being more physically affectionate during the day, but he doesn't really respond. Try initiating more serious conversations, but he keeps things superficial. One evening, finally decide to be direct about what I need. Joshua, I miss being close to you. He looks up from his laptop with a neutral expression. We live in the same house, Adrienne. How much closer do you want to be? He's being deliberately difficult again. I mean emotionally close. Intimate. Like we used to be. He closes his laptop and looks at me directly. Like we used to be. When we shared a bedroom and acted like a married couple. He's still hung up on the bedroom thing instead of understanding the bigger picture. The bedroom arrangement has nothing to do with emotional intimacy. We can be just as close and connected while maintaining our individual space. He's quiet for a moment, then shakes his head. No, Adrienne, we can't. And you proved that. Try to explain once again why separate bedrooms were supposed to improve our relationship. When both people maintain their individual autonomy, it creates space for genuine choice and authentic connection. Instead of being together out of habit or obligation, we're together because we actively choose to be. He's looking at me like I'm completely delusional. And how's that working out for us? Starting to feel genuinely upset because he's not making any effort to understand. It's not working because you're refusing to engage with the new dynamic. You're punishing me for asserting my independence instead of appreciating the opportunity to build a stronger relationship. His expression hardens. Punishing you? Adrienne, I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. He stands up and starts pacing, and I can tell he's getting really angry. You wanted independence and autonomy. You wanted your own space. You wanted to maintain your individual identity. His voice is getting louder with each sentence. Well, congratulations, you've got it. You're completely independent, completely autonomous, completely individual. He stops pacing and looks at me with this intense expression. What you don't get to do is demand that I pretend this is still a marriage. You can't have separate bedrooms and then complain that we're not intimate. You can't insist on independence and then expect me to chase after you for connection. He's completely overreacting and missing the point. This is exactly what I mean about emotional maturity, Joshua. You're so threatened by my independence that you can't see how this could actually benefit both of us. His laugh is harsh and bitter. Benefit both of us? Adrienne, look around. Does this look like it's benefiting anyone? Finally getting frustrated with his refusal to engage constructively. The only reason it's not working is because you're being stubborn and resentful. If you could get past your ego and see the bigger picture, you'd understand why this is healthier for both of us. He stares at me for a long moment, then shakes his head sadly. My ego. Adrienne, you convinced yourself that our marriage was oppressing you and that sleeping apart would fix it. He sits back down, but his posture is tense. You turned our bedroom, the most intimate space we shared, into a symbol of patriarchal oppression. You made me into the villain for wanting to sleep next to my wife. And now you're surprised that I'm not interested in pretending everything is fine. He's making this way more dramatic than it needs to be. I never said you were a villain. I said the dynamic was unhealthy. There's a difference between criticizing a system and criticizing you personally. He looks at me with this expression of complete disbelief. Adrienne, you are my wife. When you criticize our marriage as oppressive, you are criticizing me personally. Months continue to pass with this same dynamic. We're polite, but completely disconnected, like strangers who happen to share a house. No warmth, no affection, no real intimacy of any kind. Start to feel increasingly isolated and confused. This isn't at all what I expected when I suggested separate bedrooms. Thought it would give us both more space to be ourselves and then come together as equals. Instead, it feels like we barely have a relationship at all. Try bringing up the possibility of marriage counseling. Maybe we should talk to someone about how to navigate this transition. He looks at me with that same tired expression. What transition, Adrienne? You wanted independence. You got it. He's being deliberately unhelpful. I want us to figure out how to maintain our individual autonomy while still having a close relationship. A counselor might help us communicate better about these issues. He's quiet for a moment, then shrugs. If that's what you want. Make an appointment with a marriage counselor for the following week. Feel hopeful that having a neutral third party might help Joshua understand my perspective. Maybe a professional can help him see why individual autonomy is important in relationships. At the first counseling session, try to explain the situation to the therapist. I suggested we have separate bedrooms so we could both maintain our individual independence. But Joshua seems to interpret this as rejection instead of seeing it as an opportunity for healthier dynamics. The counselor asks Joshua for his perspective. He's quiet for a moment, then speaks in this calm, measured tone. Adrienne decided that sharing a bedroom was oppressive and demanded that we sleep separately. When I told her this would damage our intimacy and connection, she dismissed my concerns as patriarchal. The counselor asks us both about our expectations for the relationship. I explain that I want us to be together as equals, both maintaining our individual identities. Joshua says he wants to be married to someone who actually wants to share a life with him. After several sessions, the counselor suggests we try some exercises to rebuild intimacy, but Joshua seems completely disengaged from the process. He participates, but in this perfunctory way, like he's just going through the motions. During one session, the counselor asks directly about our physical relationship. Have to admit that we haven't been intimate in months. Joshua says he doesn't feel emotionally connected enough for physical intimacy. When the counselor asks why, he says it's hard to feel close to someone who considers your desire for closeness problematic. Try to explain that physical proximity and emotional intimacy are different things. Just because we sleep in separate rooms doesn't mean we can't be emotionally and physically intimate. The counselor asks how often we spend quality time together. Realize I can't really answer that question because we barely spend any focused time together anymore. Counselor suggests we try scheduling regular time for connection and conversation. Joshua agrees, but I can tell he's not really invested in the process. When we try to implement this at home, our conversations feel forced and artificial. After a few months of counseling, Joshua says he wants to stop going. This isn't working, Adrienne. We're just going in circles. Try to convince him to keep trying. We're making progress. These things take time. He looks at me with this expression that's part sadness and part frustration. What progress? We're still sleeping apart. We still barely connect. Nothing has changed. He's right that the surface things haven't changed, but I thought we were communicating better. We're understanding each other's perspectives more clearly. He shakes his head. No, Adrienne, I understand your perspective perfectly. You think our marriage was oppressive and that sleeping apart fixes it. I just don't agree. Stop going to counseling after that. Things continue to be polite but distant between us. We coexist in the same house but don't really have a relationship anymore. It's like we're just waiting for something to change, but nothing does. One evening, about a year after we started sleeping separately, Joshua asks to talk. He seems more serious than usual, and I can tell something is different. Adrienne, I think we need to have an honest conversation about our marriage. Sit down in the living room and try to prepare for whatever he wants to discuss. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about independence and autonomy. For a moment, feel hopeful that maybe he's finally ready to understand my perspective. And I think you're right. Wait for him to continue, feeling cautiously optimistic. You should be completely independent and autonomous. You shouldn't have to compromise your individual identity for anyone. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell him for over a year. But then he continues and his tone shifts, which is why I think we should get divorced. Feel like the air has been knocked out of me. What? He looks at me with this calm, resolved expression. You've made it clear that being married to me compromises your autonomy. You've turned our bedroom into a symbol of oppression and our marriage into a feminist theory experiment. His voice is steady, but I can hear the hurt. Underneath, I think you'd be much happier being completely independent. Can't believe he's being this dramatic. Joshua, I never said I wanted to be completely independent from you. I just wanted us to have a healthier dynamic where we both maintain our individual identities. He's already shaking his head before I finish talking. Adrienne, look at what we've become. We're roommates who share a mortgage. That's not a marriage. Feel panic rising because this is not at all what I wanted. We can fix this. We just need to work on rebuilding our connection while maintaining the healthy boundaries we've established. His expression doesn't change. What boundaries? You mean the boundary where we sleep apart and barely interact except for logistics? Try to explain that separate bedrooms don't have to mean disconnection. We can still be intimate and close while having our own space. Lots of couples have separate bedrooms and strong relationships. He looks at me with this expression of complete exhaustion. Name one, Adrienne. Name one couple you actually know who sleeps apart and has a strong marriage. Can't think of anyone specific, but I know they exist. Just because I don't personally know any doesn't mean it's not a valid arrangement. The research shows that individual autonomy strengthens relationships. He stands up, and I can tell he's made up his mind about this. The research? Adrienne, this is our actual life, not a research project. Feel completely blindsided by how final he sounds. You're being ridiculous. We can work through this. All couples go through rough patches when they're adjusting to new dynamics. He's already walking toward the door. This isn't a rough patch, Adrienne. This is who you are and what you want. Follow him out of the living room, feeling desperate. That's not true. I want to be married to you. I just want us to have a healthier relationship. He stops and turns to face me. You want to be married to me on your terms, with your conditions, according to your theories about what relationships should look like. He's completely mischaracterizing what I've been trying to achieve. I want us to be equals, Joshua. That's all I've ever wanted. His laugh is bitter. Equals? Adrienne, you've spent a year treating me like I'm oppressing you by wanting to sleep in the same bed as my wife. Try to explain one more time that this was never about rejecting him. This was about creating space for both of us to maintain our individual identities. I never wanted to push you away. He looks at me with this expression that's part anger and part sadness. You didn't just push me away, Adrienne. You dismantled our marriage piece by piece and then acted surprised when it fell apart. Over the next few weeks, Joshua starts talking to lawyers. I keep trying to convince him that we can work things out. We just need to find the right balance between togetherness and independence. But he's completely checked out of the relationship. Feel completely shocked that he's actually serious about divorce. All I wanted was to have my own bedroom and maintain some individual autonomy. Never expected him to react so drastically to such a reasonable request. Can't understand how wanting personal space turned into the end of our marriage. Try reaching out to friends and family for support. But when I explain the situation, most people seem confused about why I wanted separate bedrooms in the first place. My sister asks if there were problems with Joshua's sleeping habits or snoring. When I explain it was about autonomy and independence, she gets quiet. My mom asks if Joshua was being controlling or demanding. When I tell her no, he just expected us to share a bedroom like most married couples, she doesn't seem to understand the problem. Honey, why didn't you want to sleep next to your husband? Try to explain about individual identity and personal space, but everyone seems to think I was being unreasonable. Even my most progressive friends seem confused about why bedroom sharing was such a big issue. Feel increasingly isolated as the divorce process moves forward. Joshua is polite but completely businesslike about dividing our assets and arranging logistics. No longer feel like I'm talking to my husband, just to a lawyer's client. When the divorce is finalized, have to move into a small apartment. Finally have the complete autonomy and independence I was seeking. My own bedroom, my own space, my own schedule, no one to compromise with or accommodate. But instead of feeling liberated, feel completely devastated. The apartment is quiet and lonely in a way I never experienced when I was single before. Realize I miss having Joshua around, miss the companionship and partnership. Try to understand what went wrong. All I wanted was to maintain my individual identity while being married. Thought separate bedrooms would give us both space to be ourselves. Never expected it to completely destroy our connection. Months after the divorce, still feel confused about how things escalated so quickly. Seemed like such a reasonable request at the time. Just wanted to have my own space without having to accommodate someone else's preferences. Can't understand why Joshua couldn't see the benefits of both of us maintaining our autonomy. Realize I'm completely alone now in a way I never was before marriage. Have the independence I thought I wanted, but it feels empty and meaningless. No one to share experiences with, no one who cares about my daily life. Sometimes wonder if maybe I should have explained my needs differently, or if there was a way to maintain individual space without completely separating our sleeping arrangements. But mostly feel angry that Joshua couldn't be more emotionally mature about the whole situation. He's apparently seeing someone new now. Hear through mutual friends that he seems happy and that they're already living together. Apparently, sharing a bedroom like a normal couple. Feel bitter that he was able to move on so easily while I'm still processing what happened. Keep telling myself that I'm better off without someone who couldn't respect my need for independence. That I deserve a partner who understands the importance of individual autonomy in relationships. But deep down, starting to wonder if maybe I made a huge mistake. Miss being married more than I ever expected to. Not just the companionship, but the sense of partnership and shared purpose. Realize that being completely independent isn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. Feel like I traded away something valuable for a principle that doesn't seem as important now. Still don't understand why Joshua couldn't find a way to make it work. All I wanted was to maintain my individual identity while being married. Seemed like such a basic requirement for a healthy relationship. Can't believe he was willing to throw away our entire marriage over sleeping arrangements. But sitting alone in my apartment every night, starting to wonder if maybe there was something I didn't understand about how relationships actually work. Maybe the theories and principles I read about don't translate as easily to real life as I thought. Maybe Joshua was trying to tell me something important that I couldn't hear. Feel completely devastated and broken in a way I never expected. Thought I was being strong and independent by asserting my needs. Instead, ended up losing the most important relationship in my life. Now have all the autonomy I wanted and none of the love and partnership I took for granted. Wonder if there's any way to fix this or if I've permanently damaged something that can't be repaired. Joshua seems to have moved on completely and shows no interest in reconciliation, left with nothing but my independence and the growing realization that maybe I fundamentally misunderstood what marriage was supposed to be. Realize too late that some things are more important than individual autonomy, and that maybe the intimacy and connection I lost were worth more than the personal space I gained. But now it's too late to take any of it back, stuck with the consequences of decisions that seemed so right at the time.